So I've worked with Citrix for a long time now, from when it was a single product company defying the trend with Windows mainframes, through to now where it has a complete story from Office to cloud and a suite of technologies that enable the secure mobility of data and applications for organizations around the globe. So let's step through the agenda so you know what to expect today in a bit more detail. I think it makes sense if I start by describing the problems and scenarios that we feel need to be fixed and get your feedback on the way through on whether you're seeing similar issues or something different entirely. Then we'll step through what Citrix ShareFile is and how it works so we can map a solution onto those issues we've described previously. Finally, there are some logical next steps we can take if you're interested. Now, I'm happy to answer questions on the way through, so if you want to, you can use the GoToWebinar control panel to ask a question, and we'll keep an eye on it and answer them as they're raised. And that's that, and off we go with it. So, let's get some context to what we're seeing in the world of enterprise mobility. Now, most of the information on this slide shouldn't come as a surprise. The analysts, for what use they are, have been publicizing the explosive growth rate in mobility, data mobility and wearable technology, including the usual meaningless statistic that each Australian business user will have 2.8 devices this year. I'm not quite sure what qualifies as 0.8 of a device, but I'm sure we'll find out by the time we get to the end of the year. But in real terms, what does this mean for organizations? Well, it's all around the consumerization of IT. This has forced IT departments to enable work shifting, BYOD, deliver corporate apps on personal devices, but people wanted to get to work from anywhere and use their personal devices to ultimately get to their data and share and collaborate from anywhere with anyone. Unfortunately, existing IT deployed tools like SharePoint and remote access to mail servers, and this didn't satisfy the need for employees. So they went up and started using their own freemium, as they're called, consumer-style services, and this is the thing that keeps being overlooked in all the hubbub over mobility. It's data. So let's take a look at what is driving users to try and fix data mobility for themselves with a bit of background. And I'll warn you, there are several buzzwords coming up during this presentation, so apologies in advance. For users, the main drivers pushing them to consumer file-sharing products are mobile work styles. The notion that employees should be able to work from their best location. It's prompting IT to look for solutions that could support work shifting while ensuring employees remained productive and can get access to their data and synchronize it from anywhere. Now, employees also started using personal devices at work, which is leading IT organizations to adopt a formal bring your own device strategy, and people want access to all their resources on any device. And the continued growth in this whole kind of dispersed global workforce, linking up with customers, operations, driving that need for instant access to data and applications for easy sharing and collaboration. These are all the factors that are driving users to demand and need improved access to their data. It's all about data mobility, and I call it a bit of a security iceberg, hence the graphic on there. It's because often organizations have no idea how widespread it is and what data is being moved. Unless you're in an ultra-secure environment, then it happens pretty much everywhere, either through good intentions or more worryingly through malice. It seems I'm not the only one thinking like this, because according to this ESG crowd, the Enterprise Security Group, they estimate that 70% of organizations believe their users have their own data mobility solutions. Now, for some reason, this seems to be a surprise to a lot of people, but it really shouldn't be. Users have been taking data home for decades. I'm sure we've all done it. If I put a timeline on here that runs from then till now and give it a meaningful scale, I can show you that this is not a new problem. It's typically just the form factor for moving the data has got simpler for the user and more difficult to manage for IT. Now, a few of us on here will probably remember reports generated on listing paper. My first job was running and printing these reports out. And then as PCs came along, they decided to move on to floppy disks. And then more recently it was USB keys, and then latterly it's cloud-based consumer products. Now, this has been driven by the consumerization of IT in action. As form factors have become prevalent in terms of cost and availability, their use has spread. You probably remember when floppy disk prices went from costing dollars down to a few cents, and the same with USB sticks. Users are expecting their data to move with them and be available when they need it, not held within some inflexible, monolithic legacy IT framework of file shares, document management and intranets, locked away behind corporate firewalls and complex VPNs. And there's another reason why companies such as Google and Microsoft and Dropbox and Box and Apple have been giving away storage on the internet free for years. It's to drive adoption from the inside out of organizations and their technologies. And the problem for IT has been that without access to an enterprise solution, they simply offer nothing. And users are filling that vacuum with their own solution, leading to that Dropbox problem, users moving corporate data with little regard for security or auditing. Now, there's a lot of demand in the market for an enterprise solution, both from end users and IT. Now, that need arises because of this tug of war between users and IT that I've alluded to in the previous slides, because of this consumerization pressure. IT feels that pressure of users bringing their own tools to work. Work shifting is driving the need for an enterprise solution, and more work is being done by virtual teams across organizational boundaries, and collaboration tools need to enable this kind of reality. So as we get to this point, here's a first poll question for you. So if you have a look on the GoToWebinar panel there, ask yourself, does your organization have the Dropbox problem? Okay, good. Thanks for those answers on that. I'm just going to close that for now and then continue. So, for secure data mobility, often people need to be thinking outside the box or boxes, box.net, Dropbox, this sort of thing. These consumer file sharing applications have security problems that are well publicized. You know, there's been times where passwords have been compromised on there, and users have reported receiving spam emails from websites that were reportedly able to retrieve their user information from these file sharing services. Putting your information in a box is a bad thing to do, figuratively and actually. Putting it in a box hides it from corporate protection and control, which is not a good thing. So now we've talked about the problems, let's have a look at how Logicalis has put together a solution. Secure data mobility can be approached in different ways depending on the needs of the organization. It can be a standalone solution using just Citrix ShareFile, or for other scenarios in different organizations, it may form part of a wider solution that encompasses not only enterprise mobility management, it's another buzzword, EMM, which is a new way of saying BYOD, but as part of securing the actual network. Now, Logicalis has a known background in Cisco, and Cisco ICE is a product that's quite clever if you haven't come across it before, in that it allows an organization to create security and access policies on the network, from VPNs through Wi-Fi down to the physical LAN ports in a building. The idea is if you're enabling non-corporate devices on your network, why wouldn't you control where they can go on the network beyond the simple concept of a segmented LAN or a VLAN approach? Now, we're one of the few partners with real experience of implementing this, and I'm happy to talk about it a bit further later on, but we'll press on with the ShareFile piece for now. Now, we have a solution for securing data, and we can secure the network connectivity. Citrix also has an EMM solution called Zen Mobile. Now, Zen Mobile isn't the focus of this session today, but it's worth noting that if you have Citrix Zen App or Zen Desktop Platinum, you can get it either with a 20% discount or for free, depending on your requirements. So, another quick poll question there for you on the control panel. Do you have Citrix at the moment? And if so, which platform? There we are, that poll should be on there now, so you can just click the answer on there and then we'll zip on. Excellent. Thank you for that. So, back to ShareFile. Let's take a look at what ShareFile can do to help resolve those problems we were talking about a few minutes ago. You remember the graphic from a few slides back describing that tug of war? Well, Citrix ShareFile was designed from the ground up as an enterprise solution to meet the competing expectations of users and IT. It's that classic thing of usability versus security. And ShareFile is a tool that for IT enables them to allow users to feel they have the access to the data they want and where they want it, but crucially IT stays in control without being seen as an obstacle to them. Now, we'll see a bit more of this in detail shortly, but ShareFile can meet that corporate security and compliance with a secure service. You can store the data at the best location. That could be on your existing file servers. It could be in the cloud, depending on the needs of the business, making it easy to connect their users, customers, or other third parties with the data they need. Now, importantly for users, the data can be made available offline, giving them the ability to view, sync, and edit their data as they roam between devices. Built into ShareFile is also the ability to edit Office documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and also annotate PDFs on the go. So you can actually do something with that data while it's offline. And ShareFile can integrate with Outlook to fix the problem of sending and receiving large file attachments by replacing the file with a link, and we'll have a quick demo of that a little bit later on. You can also set an expiration date on those files, the number of times it can be downloaded, as well as being notified when it has been added, when a file's been uploaded or downloaded. Now, for the users, ShareFile also integrates into Windows Explorer and Mac Finder, the same as Dropbox and OneDrive and all those sort of tools. So further security is also included in this from the IT control perspective, with the ability to remote wipe, report, and auditing while the data in the ShareFile system is being protected by 256-bit encryption, both in transit and while it's at rest. So ShareFile has two main components and a whole bunch of bolt-on features that we'll come to later. Now, I mentioned that it's obviously an enterprise class product, but let's just take a look at the kind of core components and just see what the differentiators are in there. The first feature is ShareFile workspaces. Now, users can access and sync all of their data from any device and securely share it with people inside and outside the organization. And they can do that with file sizes up to 100 gigabytes in size. ShareFile also has the concept of three types of users. Employees, that's your users that you pay a license for. Clients, which are users from companies or partners that you set up on the system, but they don't consume a license, but they get a subset of the ShareFile functionality. And you can also have anonymous users whom you may want to be able to allow to upload or download a document on a casual, less formal basis, perhaps a sales brochure, for example. The storage used here can be provided as part of your subscription from Citrix, and that can be on the web using Amazon S3, and they do actually have a location in Sydney for that. Or it can be a block of storage from a cloud provider such as Logicalis, or based within your own on-premise storage fabric. Now that's a crucial difference. ShareFile can connect to your on-premise storage and share that to users. It doesn't have to be in the cloud. The second core feature within ShareFile is ShareFile Sync. Now it's this component that helps IT embrace user mobility by offering a solution that enables employees to work and collaborate from anywhere on any device. You can get to the ShareFile data through a whole myriad of different applications that run on a variety of mobile platforms, as well as from a browser as well. The data can also be accessed offline, and that offline feature allows you to do that editing of the documents on the go, as I mentioned earlier. So that's workspaces giving you access to all your data and Sync making it available across the devices. And that's a fairly solid start for the product. So let's just take a look at some of those WYSI features I alluded to a moment ago. So on here, ShareFile has a range of enterprise class services, or WYSI features, as I like to call them, and it's worthwhile taking a brief look at them to give you a better understanding of the product's ability. Now, I've got these as screenshots just because you never know if the demo gods are going to be kind of smiling on you favorably or not. What I will do is just show you how it integrates into ShareFile on here. So if I just drop out of the slideshow there for a second, and if I go into my Outlook, which I've got on my local device, I'll just pull up a new email, which I'll show you in a second, and drag onto the screen. So hopefully you should be able to see that blank email message. Now what I'm going to do is just send a file to myself at work. There we are. Test file. Now you see I've got the ShareFile add-in integrated into Outlook on here. So what I'm able to do is I can send a file from within here, or I can also insert a link. If I go into my message here, and I can actually ask the user to send me a file. And they can just click on that link, and that will take them to a secure location within my ShareFile infrastructure where they can upload a file. Now, I mentioned I was going to send a presentation, so let me just attach a file on here. Now, I've got a file that I've obviously already prepared for this, And you can see that this is a 8.6 meg file. So I just open it like that, and the first thing that will happen is it will drop the attachment in here, and as it does it, it will substitute a link into the email there, so that when this email gets sent to the user, they can download the attachment and it will just drop straight out of ShareFile. But what I do have the ability to do within here is when I'm sending a file, I can change the options. I can require a name and email address. I can require recipients to log in. I can give them anonymous access. And I can also be notified when they've downloaded the files. I can expire the files after a certain amount of time, and I can allow them a certain number of downloads. And those settings can be are set globally by the administrator, and then optionally you can allow the users to tailor it to their specific requirements. And the same thing happens here with the request to file. You can require the recipients to log in, you can give them that anonymous access, and you can be notified when the files have been uploaded. You can also, importantly, change the actual location within ShareFile of where you want that file to be uploaded into. So, for example, you might decide you want to load it up into a particular customer folder on here, for example. And it will just go ahead and do that. I can then send that email, and that will whiz off, and it will hit my corporate email, and I'll get the message, and I'll then be able to upload it and download the files. So if I just flick back over into PowerPoint now for a second, some of the benefits of doing this are the fact that it unclogs the Exchange servers. So that's a whole load of attachments and things like that, and you can define the size that you want those to be that don't go through and get stored within Exchange all the time. Now, unfortunately, if you use GroupWise or Notes, this doesn't apply to you. But if you're an Exchange shop, it's definitely worth taking a look at this, because it can do a lot to help reduce your backup windows and things like that, as well as, more importantly, giving users a really simple way to be able to upload and download files. So if you have that as a requirement in your organization, it's a good one to look at. Our internal sales team use this for distributing the Cisco price list, which is something like 70 or 80 megabytes in size. We now use ShareFile to do it, and they're just posted out via ShareFile. So the next demo on here, just very quickly, is just to look at it within Windows Explorer. I'm not running Mac, but it's the same sort of concept. So like I say, there's a plugin on there for Explorer, and if I just go here to this Explorer window, you can see I've got a variety of things. I've also got Dropbox, I've got OneDrive, but I've also got ShareFile. And within ShareFile here, these are my shared folders, and this happens to be just the one shared folder that I've got synchronized down here. So as I'm doing this, I can see the files, and these are the files that I've actually got up in ShareFile on the web in that folder. But I've chosen only to synchronize the one folder down out of the environment. If I just pull up the system tray utility for this and launch the ShareFile website, you can actually see on here, when I look at my shared folders, I've got a whole bunch of folders in here, but it's just purely that Equity Trustees folder that I've got synchronized down onto my device. So I can scan up into it, but the nice thing is with these folders available on here, I can now simply drag and drop folders in and files into here as if they're part of my normal file system. So that's the beauty of that kind of local integration there. It's all about making it easy for the users to get access to it and get working with this stuff without there having to be a massive training window, kind of a huge learning curve for them. So I mentioned that ShareFile has this storage that you can get as part of a subscription with Citrix. So this map just gives you an idea of where it's located. Now obviously, if you have data sovereignty issues, this may not be the tool for you. But these ShareFile storage zones, as they're called, are where storage is presented as effectively a blob of storage that can be on the web in one of these data centers on here, or you can also put it into your own storage fabric. So you can create effectively a share on your NetApp, your EMC, on a file server, and you can make that available as if it was storage, the same as being one of these on the internet storage zones. And with that, it doesn't integrate into your existing file system and this sort of thing. It's just purely there for storage that you want to make available to people to dump files into in a non-structured manner, if you like. So if you want to make corporate brochures, information available, that's the sort of stuff that you can do with it. So that's a storage zone. And then if you want to connect into your actual file system and this sort of thing, you use a product from within ShareFile called a storage zone connector. Now, this is an example of the client running on iOS, and I've got a demo I'll show you on iOS a little bit later on. But the storage zone connectors not only give you access to these folders here that we just saw within Explorer and in the browser, but also you'll notice network shares and SharePoint. So if you've got SharePoint running within your organization, ShareFile can connect the user directly into your SharePoint infrastructure. It can connect them directly to your mapped network drives. And within ShareFile, you've got the ability to check out and check in documents, as well as obviously to be able to edit them as well. So that's quite powerful in terms of being able to expose and mobilize that internal data securely. And this data, when it's cached down onto the local device here, then it's actually encrypted while it's on there. And as I mentioned, it can also be remotely wiped by the administrator as well. So I just wanted to show you very quickly here, there's integration with Active Directory, and that can be done in one of two ways. ShareFile has SAML support built into it, but if you're using that Zen Mobile EMM product, you can also do user provisioning and deprovisioning via the Zen Mobile console, and it will drive the user account creation and deletion within ShareFile itself. If I just flick out of here for a second and back onto that ShareFile panel on here, you can see that I can go in on here as an administrator, and I've got the ability to create employees and create a client. So if I go through the steps to, for example, create a client, perhaps I've got a customer that I want to connect into a particular folder. I'll use my own email address just as the example here. I can set myself up like that. I can add this user to an address book, and I choose just to add that in there. I can also edit that user's information, so I can put a bit more contact information in here. Make it galactic pink. I'll receive notifications in real time, and as I set this user up, what will happen is I'll receive an email, and then I'm able to log in and connect into the folders that have been made available to me. But you'll also notice down here I've got this Manage Connected Apps and Devices for this user. And what that gives me the ability to do is, wherever that user's connected into ShareFile from a client, so for example maybe off their iPad or off their tablet, I can go in and actually manage what that device is doing with ShareFile, including the ability to wipe that data off the device if I want to. So that's quite powerful in there. I'll just save those changes and I'll just run through on there. So if I now go into Browse Clients, I'll see myself logged on there. I've given myself the wrong email address in there, unfortunately. But that'll go through there. I can then go back in. I can manage that user. I can assign them permissions onto folders. So if I go to here now, I can look at the range of shared folders that are available. I could go to the Equity Trustees folder, and I could then manage the permissions on here, who this folder is shared with. I can go in. I can add a user, I can add that from my personal address book, and I can select this user here, add selected users, and then they're made available, and I can select the permissions I want them to have. Now this is something that an administrator can do, but also you can delegate these permissions if you want to down to users. So if you have a user that's working perhaps in your sales department and is often sending out tenders and receiving contracts and this sort of thing, you could give them the ability to do this kind of work for themselves. So it's very much, it doesn't have to be something that IT has to run as well. It's something you can delegate and push out. And it's a fairly simple interface to navigate. Our internal sales team absolutely love it because they can just jump in here and get on and do this without the need to interact and wait on anybody else in the organization. So it's ideal for those guys. Right, back into here. So I mentioned Zen Mobile and its integration with ShareFile. So just staying with that for a second, Zen Mobile uses a client called Works, W-O-R-X. And the Works client can be deployed out to iOS and Android devices. And within there, there's a variety of applications, Works Web and also Works Mail. Now, within the Works framework, there's a feature called MDX Ready. And basically what this means is, if you have an application, like Salesforce for example, or a PDF reader that's MDX Ready, it can interact within that Zen mobile environment. So those documents from Salesforce, you could take a Salesforce document and you could store it down into ShareFile, all within this secure containerized storage on here, so that there's no leakage of the corporate data out onto the local device. And there's a whole range of applications now that are MDX enabled. You can also, if you've got your own in-house applications that you're looking to push out, that you push out with a, as you would do with a normal kind of MDM management tool, you can actually make those guys MDX ready as well. There's a simple wrapper that you put around the file, make them MDX ready, and they could then be dumping and storing data into ShareFile. They could be reading data out of ShareFile, as well as interacting with these other applications that are all within that corporate context. So that's quite clever. If you've got Zen App or Zen Desktop, you can obviously take the desktop client that I showed you earlier, and you can integrate it down into the desktop. If you're ever looking at running VDI desktops in the future, then you can think about ShareFile for working around some of the download and synchronization issues. A lot of the time when people push out a virtual desktop, they will get the system, Zen Desktop, to build a new desktop for the user each time they log on, so they're coming from a clean desktop. The only problem with that is, by default, user data will be copied down each time they log on, which puts quite a bit of demand on the file storage and on the network. Using that ShareFile sync feature, you can set it so that those files are all available, but they're only downloaded onto the machine and synchronized when the user actually clicks on them to edit them or to save them or to share the file. And that can be a good reduction in IOPS on your back-end infrastructure, as well as saving on the storage requirements as well. So it's a neat little side benefit. Now obviously everybody's worried about security these days, and rightly so. And there's a couple of features within here that's useful from a security perspective. It's important to understand that if you're a ShareFile customer, you retain all rights to all your data that's uploaded. None of it passes or is licensed across to Citrix. So that's one of the first key things. You also, as the customer, have the option to decide where you want to store that data. You can store that up in the cloud with a service from Citrix, or on your own on-premise file servers and things like that. And unlike with some of the other file sharing services out there, the data isn't scanned on the way in and out for DRM protection. Now this came up because it was found that one of our customers, they were using a file sharing service that wasn't ShareFile, and they were trying to share MSDN, the Microsoft ISOs internally, and they were being checked. The data that was in them was being checked, and they were being prevented from sharing them with other users in the organization. And that leads to quite a few concerns about man-in-the-middle interception of the data that can be stored in those systems. Now, as I mentioned a couple of times earlier, the data within here is all stored as 256-bit encryption, and historically the uptime on the system is something around 99.95%. There's a number of other features that are built in there on the security side of it, which we've talked about, including the remote wipe, including the device lock, and the ability to expire data that's on those devices as well. In addition, when you have that Citrix Managed Storage Zone, there's a whole load of best practices that Citrix adhere to with it, including the fact that all the files, all the data within there is stored on a daily basis using McAfee, and I believe it's using their secure accreditation. So we did touch on just the mobile work styles and this sort of thing. And one thing I wouldn't mind doing is just doing a quick demo now of the actual how this looks on a mobile device. So I'll just drop out of here for a second, and then hopefully I'm just going to pull up the device on my iPad. Now this just sometimes takes a second or two to synchronize through, as is always the way with these things. So let me just do this. Right. I just need to restart my application here, and then you should see the iPad come up on the screen here, hopefully in a few seconds. There we go. AirPlay, connect, mirroring. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is resize this window and drag it across onto my other monitor. So hopefully now you should be able to see my iPad on the screen there. And what I'll do is just drop back down onto here, and as you can see I've got ShareFile. There we go. So if I just log into ShareFile, one of the things I can do with ShareFile when it's running on the mobile device is I not only have to enter my username and password, but for more convenient access, the administrator can allow the user to actually have a PIN code associated with it. So in this instance, I can just go straight in with a PIN code, and every time I drop out of ShareFile and flick back into it, I just have to enter a PIN code to get access to it. So that's useful, especially if it's a personal device that may be being used by people other than the employee. Now you can see within here, I've got those range of options that we saw on that slide earlier. I'll also just tap there onto File Shares and Shares, and that's data that's on a file share within the corporate data center. So that's sat on a file server on our network internally, that data on there. Now if I go back up here, I can also see that I've got access to my files and my documents on there. I've got access into the file box. I can view one of these documents, and if I just tap down here on the little pencil icon, I can load it and I can edit that document as well. So if I just do this, say, hi, this is another edit on the, what day are we on today? 24th. April. There's also various tools and options that I have on here as well. So I can do spell check, I've got the word count, I can track changes as well within the document. All the kind of core features that you might need if you were trying to edit and work on a document offline. I can also generate a new document from scratch on here. If the administrator enables the options, the option on there, I can also insert pictures from the device, this sort of thing. So if somebody was trying to prepare a report with maybe an accident report or something like that, or a maintenance report, they could insert the pictures off their device and send it off. If I just do close, it'll now give me the option to save or not save those changes. I'll just do a save, and the file's then uploaded back to ShareFile, and it will then be synchronized out to my other devices and made available on there. So I'll just pop back over to there. Now the other piece I did want to just try with this was just give you an idea of what this looks like when it's running across on other devices as well. So I've got it running there on my iPad, and what I will do, this is a bit of a new one for me, I've not tried doing this particular demo in real time, is I'm going to use it and just try and show you it running on my phone. Okay, so that's my Windows phone. It's running now. And if I just flick back over to here, this is running. This is actually running out over the internet and coming back down onto my device. So it's a little bit slow to do the screen refreshes and stuff there. But there we go. There's my device. There's ShareFile running on my phone, and I can connect in. And there's my files and folders again, same as we saw before. I can just click in through there. I can look at the file box. I can see that document that I've just been working on and editing. And if I want to, I can just simply select the document, and you'll see there at that point I've got the ability to open it. I can also just preview it, or I could also send that file off to somebody else as well if I wanted to. So that's it, kind of working across several devices simultaneously. And you can see here that I've still got the iPad running here in the background as well. So let me just go back onto there to the shared folders. And like I say, you can go back, you can drop down to SharePoint, you can drop down to the file shares, and that's the quite clever thing with this. I can separate this data out, so that the shares on here, this could be for data that's held on my network. Over here, this could be data that I have dropped out onto the internet because perhaps it's more frequently accessed by customers, this sort of thing. So that's just a quick demonstration of how those pieces gel together. and I am conscious of time, so I will push on with this as well. So, as we move forward with this, just a swift one on here, and there's some, I've got it actually as a kind of almost meaningless statistics, but there's some of them that are kind of interesting on here. You know, there's this whole thing about 3 devices per employee, there's 200% growth in SaaS, the fact that 90% of enterprises are worried about this unmanaged data that's being shared out there, and that 70% believe their users do actually do it to some degree or another. You know, 95% of enterprises have mobile email, but most are worried about the security of it and the fact that you can use this Zen mobile and ShareFile to help secure that stuff. So just while we're here, there is just a very another quick poll question I'd like to just share with you. There we go. So what percentage of your users do you think are sharing that data on there? You know, that's in that kind of unsecure manner. Excellent, thank you for that. So I'll just close that and drop back into the slides again. Okay. Now, what we have done is, we've just done that demo there, but as you can see on here, just to pause on here for a second, this ShareFile is just available across a whole range of devices there. You know, there's even a mobile site there, so if you've got people that are running Symbian devices that don't have necessarily a native client available for them, you can push them at the mobile client. They can get access to it. You know, you've got the ability to get to this from, you know, within Windows 8 on an RT tablet, or obviously there's also a full-blown client for Windows 8 Professional as well. So, and there's the one thing to highlight with this is there are different levels of functionality depending on the client device that you're running on. You know, so for example, you'll be able to do less with the mobile site version of it than you can on an iPad, for example. Obviously, we've seen that editor there. One thing I didn't show you was the actual ability to do the PDF annotation, but very similar to the Word documents there. You can go in, you can edit the PDFs, you can even do the signature on the screen, this sort of thing, to sign off a document, which is quite handy. So what's next? Well, just very swiftly, I wanted to step through just a couple of quick example case studies. So this is our CFO, Paul Crilly. Some of you may have met him already. Now, in Paul's case, he needed to be able to access data and work with it offline. He also had a really big security concern because he had data that he needed to share as part of his job as CFO with third parties, with auditors, and there was, obviously there's a concern there that you don't want that data to become compromised. You want to be able to keep track of where that data's gone to, this sort of thing. So we enabled ShareFile for Paul, and what that basically means is he can sync his data, or ShareFile syncs his data, across the devices that he wants to use. So when he's flying interstate, when he's flying overseas, he's able to have access to that data and work with it offline. He can send links to his third-party partners and customers that he needs to share that data with, so they can securely access that data as well. And more importantly, from an administrator perspective, we've got the ability, if he loses one of those devices, it can be remotely wiped, and we can also remotely wipe the data if it's held on a third-party device as well. So it's all around securing the data there. We've also got a couple of other swift examples on here, replacing FTP uploads. National leasing company that we work with, their sales team responds to tenders and contracts, documents between 50 megs and 2 gigs with a lot of images in them. Currently using an FTP server, they're using Lotus Notes for their emails, so they can't use the Outlook integration. So the solution they've gone with is they're using ShareFile with their on-premise storage zone. So they've taken a blob of storage and made it available on the internet from their own internal servers. So it meets their data sovereignty requirements. The customers, they've given them ShareFile client accounts, so they have to sign in and get it. They use the ShareFile desktop plugin with their own users, and that's what the users are sending the documents to their customers with, and how they also send them links to upload the documents, and they receive email notifications when those files are uploaded and downloaded. So they're not having to wait around and go back constantly to check. They get an alert saying, yep, your data's there. Another swift example on here is the enabling a mobile sales team. It's a financial consultancy company. Their sales team work across Australia remotely. They have to have regulatory compliance on their security. And currently, the salespeople have to dock their machines in the office to download templates to their local PC. With ShareFile, they've gone for an on-premise storage zone. So again, they're storing those templates and things on their own file servers. The files are cached offline onto their local device. And the documents, when they've completed signing them up with a client, the customer, those are securely uploaded to the internal file share using a storage zone connector. So they use the blob of storage for making the templates available, and they then allow the users to connect to their own file servers to upload the documents straight back in. And those are done with unique credentials and also a time-expired upload link. The final example on here is an exam marking body. They need to distribute the exam papers. Currently, they have to do it with physical media, and using ShareFile with a storage zone connector, they connect into those on-premise file shares where the data is already held. The exam markers can use ShareFile clients on the iPad with their Active Directory credentials to access the documents for marking, and the papers are cached on the device. They're encrypted. The device can be wiped if it's compromised, and they're synchronized securely back into the data center. So I guess just as we kind of draw towards the end here, how do you know if you need ShareFile? Well, the first question is, are your users sharing data? Do they need to? Are they using USB keys, this sort of thing, which is, is Dropbox being used to share that data, or some other kind of consumer-grade file sharing product? If it is, typically you may want to have a look at that in the context of something like ShareFile, which has got that enterprise integration in there. And it's typically, this is the sort of initiative being led by executives. They're the ones that are using Google Drive and Dropbox to share that data. And if you don't have those sort of problems, do you have that requirement where you've got to send large files with partners or customers or contractors or receive large files in? It makes it a lot easier with ShareFile than it does trying to run a secure FTP server or some similar setup. So I guess that's just a kind of quick wrap-up. We've whizzed through what the kind of challenges were there with the current landscape. We've talked about what ShareFile can do, and also given you some examples of how customers are using it as well as demoing it. So hopefully you've got a sense for how ShareFile can work, and where it may or may not be useful within your organization. So with that, I'll just open it up if there are any questions. Questions. There we go. Questions. So I did have a question that's come in here just regarding the encryption. Yes, the data when it's being sent through is encrypted. So it's sent with 256-bit encryption out from either the storage that's on the web or internally, and it's encrypted on the device when it's cached down into that ShareFile client. And as I've mentioned as well, you can also wipe it on there. There's another question on here as well, just about that offer that was mentioned about the Citrix earlier on. And it's just purely, if you buy XenApp Platinum or Zen Desktop Platinum, or you already have the licenses, then you can get the Zen Mobile Enterprise Edition, which includes ShareFile, at a 20% discount. If you just need an MDM solution, you can get Zen Mobile MDM Edition free of charge with it. So that's the couple of questions I have there, and yes, I think that's me. I think that's me done. Unless there's anything else from anyone else. No.
Brian, it's Hannah. Just quickly, we'd just like to quickly announce the winner of iPad. As you all know, we are giving away an iPad today for all the people that did attend the webinar. So I'd like to congratulate Mike Petrovitz. Sorry with the pronunciation of your last name, but we'll be in contact in regards to the iPad. And I would like to thank Brian for the wonderful presentation today. Even it amazes me how easy how easy it is for you to transfer all of those documents on an iPad, on an iPhone, and then also show us on your desktop as well. So thanks so much.
No problem.
And that's a wrap-up for today. We'll be in contact, and if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you.